Hlonipha Mokoena, Professor, good morning. I'm sorry we've had these troubles contacting you.
No, it's perfect. I'm here.
Okay, good. Unfortunately, we have less time than I had hoped for, but I mean, how much of the history of Shaka is uncontested? Because a lot of it is oral, and then the written record would have been written by people with very clear motives for writing whatever they wrote about Shaka.
Basically, we know very little about Shaka. Everything that we know about him was said in retrospect after he was dead. And so what we did for the film was that we mixed the old and the new. We sort of used the few facts that we have about him to create, I guess, new facts, new ideas about who he was.
And what determined those new ideas? I mean, how were those new facts come up with? Just by scrutinizing the historical record and teasing out a little to a lot, or looking at Shaka in the modern context? How does one go about building a three-dimensional, fully blooded figure on television from the scant historical record?
We basically did what many of my colleagues are involved in, which is to construct what is being called the 500-year archive. So we basically took events that took place over 500 years and then condensed them into small little pieces within the series. So, for example, for those of you who were watching last night, the character of Mudli represents a kind of old world order in which everyone was polite, everyone listened to the king, everyone was diplomatic, etc., etc. And as you saw in the first episode, he is almost shocked when the world suddenly changes in front of his eyes. So essentially, we've taken a character like Mudli and given him almost 500-year set of ideas and put it into one person.
And to what extent was the figure of Shaka that we're seeing in these 12 episodes determined by the needs of television drama versus a desire to stay as historically accurate as it is possible to be, understanding that there's not much history to determine accuracy?
We couldn't pretend that we were making a documentary about Shaka. And so what we did was we dramatized exactly the small aspects of his life. So, for example, we know that his parents met. We know that they were not supposed to meet. They were not meant for each other. Nhlanhla was meant for a totally different set of alliances, and Nandi was meant for a totally different set of alliances. And they met by accident, and they fell in love, and then everything else is controversy after that. And so we took that and created a love story which would excite the audience, which would make the audience want to know what happens next, even though everyone essentially knows what happens next, that Nandi falls pregnant with the future Shaka. So yes, we did play it up, and we played up every character. We played up Ntombazi, who more often than not is simply described as a witch, and now we've given her a whole motive, we've given her a whole story to make her into a believable 2023 witch.
But you think that there is a reasonable chance that the characters I'm watching on the screen have a connection with the real individual characters, or the real kind of set of characters of a particular bent from history? So in other words, what I'm seeing is not completely divorced from what the historical Shaka and that time might have been.
Okay, so let me give you just one of the biggest complications we had.
Yeah.
Cameras arrived in South Africa only in the 1830s. So most of the photographs that we have from the southeast coast only date to the 1870s, 1880s, 1890s. So essentially, when it comes to visual material, the period before the 1870s is a total blank. We simply do not even know what people look like. We do not know what hairstyles they had. We do not know what they ate. We do not know how they built their homes. We are just guessing based on what we have from about the 1870s to the 1880s. So what we did was we took that and we simply tried to push it back by 100 years. So yes, we had to be creative. Yes, we had to tell a few white lies, and we were hoping that the audience is not going to spot the white lies.
Well, if there are no unarguable facts to put against the white lies. I don't think too many people are going to spot the white lies. And at the end of it, at 12, at the end of the 12th episode, do you think those people who have watched this will have a sense, a comforting sense of what Zulu history, Zulu culture could have been like, probably was quite close to being like what they've just watched?
I think the one thing that we want the audience to feel is, number one, is to feel that Shaka was a hero amongst other heroes. So, for example, many people, and we didn't think that this would happen, we thought that they would totally dislike Zwide and feel very ambivalent. But from what I saw last night on social media, people were so excited to just see a bad guy who is an African, who belongs to their region, who has the same clan names as them. And so people were just excited to see someone who is like them, who is a bad guy, and you kind of know that he existed in history, but the way we've portrayed him is so exaggerated, but in your face as well, that people kind of like him. And so by the end of the series, people should feel that Shaka was not the only hero. And then number two, they should feel the desire to know more, because there's going to be season 2. So we hope that by the end of season 1, people will be like, I like this story and I want to see what happens next.
Professor Hlonipha Mokoena, thank you very, very, very much.
Afternoon Drive with John Maytham
on CapeTalk.